Hi, and welcome back to Times Square today. I'm your host, Greg Roulette, and right now I'm joined by Dave Carvajal, who is the best kept secret in New York City tech. Maybe not the best kept secret after today, but excited to have you here, and thanks for joining us on Times Square today.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Definitely, and we're going to learn why you are that best kept secret here today and how you're helping these tech companies build their executive teams and get massive growth in their companies.
Yeah.
And before we get into that, I want to just learn a little bit more about your background and maybe how you got started in this world.
So I had the good fortune, Greg, of being involved with a couple of companies that had some pretty significant success.
Yeah.
I co-founded back in the 90s a company called hotjobs.com, which we ended up growing to, we actually grew that company 500% revenue growth every single year for 4 years in a row.
Wow.
In 4 years, we took it from 400,000 to 96 million in revenues. We had 68% EBITDA margins. And so it was a beautiful business. We managed to take the company public. It traded at a $1.2 billion market cap.
Wow.
And then 9/11 hit, and the whole world changed. We managed to grow the company to 650 employees. When we first started Hot Jobs, there were over 150 companies already doing online recruitment.
Right.
And we managed to get it to the number 2 spot.
Nice.
And then took it public. After 9/11, we managed to continue to eke out some growth. Grew it from 96 million to 125 million in revenues. The number 1 internet media company on the entire planet at that time was Yahoo.
Wow.
And so we sold Hot Jobs to Yahoo for close to 500 million. And it was fantastic. Everyone was thrilled. The investors were thrilled. You know, it was a pretty kind of dark time in American history after 9/11.
Yeah.
And so, took a time out for a couple of years and then got together again with some guys that I'd actually hired at Hot Jobs. And I said, look, boys, it's time to get back to work. Let's go do it again.
Yeah.
And so we started another company called The Ladders.
Okay.
And I was there for the first 5 years. We grew that one to 400 people, 82 million in revenues. And by 2008, there we were again. It was the hottest game in town.
Wow.
And then 2009, I kind of ventured off on my own because the entire headhunting space was collapsing.
Right.
The biggest headhunters were running scared for cover inside the corporate HR departments of the biggest companies they could find. This was after that credit crisis when Ben Bernanke and Tim Geithner were given executive authority over the Federal Reserve. This had never before happened in American history.
Yeah.
And of course, I made a contrarian move because fundamentally I believed in 2 things. One, that it is in fact technology that has the power to create prosperity and abundance and would ultimately pull the US and global economies out of the gutter. And secondly, I believe that New York City would become a thriving metropolis of internet and tech-enabled startups.
Yeah.
And on some level, in the last 7 years, Greg, both of those things have happened.
Right.
And we've had the good fortune of being invited into some of the biggest success stories in New York City tech to help build out the executive teams of those companies.
Right. Well, let's go back to 2009 when you start to think about this of, hey, I can actually help these companies. And you've obviously learned a lot with the Ladders, with Hot Jobs. You've seen a lot about how companies hire and how they find people and how they find talent. So walk us back to 2009 and that moment where you said, you know what, I can actually help these companies more by being an integral part of them versus just being a search portal for them.
Yeah, that's great. You know, the thing that I saw in the marketplace, Greg, and what I realized was that a lot of the big search firms, what they're actually doing is level 2 recruiting.
Yeah.
Which is nothing more than, this thing called referrals and networking. And basically they were taking talent that was available and convenient. Usually it was talent that was left over from another search.
Right.
And they were introducing them to their clients, right? And I developed the notion that the best way to actually do high quality, high caliber executive search is really to only focus on level 3 recruiting.
Okay.
And level 3 recruiting, it's about how do we identify and engage the best 25, the best 40, 50, 60 people on the planet to come be a CFO or a chief technology officer for us. Those 2 little words, for us, change everything because then it's about a process, then it's about a methodology of understanding and defining your own core values so that we can match against that, right? The biggest success, the biggest reason why anyone will succeed or fail at any company has everything to do with whether their personal DNA matches the cultural DNA of the CEO, leader of the organization.
Yeah, and I love what you really said there about the level 3 versus the level 2 because again, sometimes on these job portals, people they're searching for a job, they're not searching for the right values or the right beliefs that match between the two. And I want to talk a little bit about the state of New York tech and how the growth has been happening here and some of the companies happening here. What is the state of it and what are some of the biggest challenges that these companies face as they try to build their businesses here in New York City?
That's great. Well, look, I'll say to you that over the history of America, there have always been second cities that have threatened to be the shining city in America.
Right.
In the 1800s in finance, it was Boston and Philadelphia. In the 1950s, for manufacturing, it was places like Lansing, Michigan, and Detroit. And when you look at the amount of tech investing on the West Coast in the last 10 years, it's been basically about 10x what New York City has been. But in the last 2 years, that number has shrunk to 4x.
Wow.
So the amount of investing that's happening in New York City tech is growing. And when you look at, according to a report by the Atlantic Monthly magazine, when you look at the amount of migration that's happening in the United States of college graduates who represent two things, intellect and creativity, New York City is growing 2.5 times faster than the second fastest growth city, which is San Francisco.
Wow.
And so, look, I think this is a promising kind of story for New York City over time, because when you think about the Northeast and the talent pool,
right,
it is unlike anything else in the world.
So talking about the talent pool, but now with the emerging tech, is the talent pool match the tech skills and the fast growth skills that are needed to build the industry here in New York? Does that exist, or is that something? That's really where you guys come into play?
Look, well, I was recruiting back in the 90s, right? And back then it was all about finance, right? So I was pulling the guy out of Merrill Lynch who developed a fixed income trading desk using C++, Unix, and Sybase, right? And the only reason I pulled him out was because a week earlier I picked up the job order from the Jay Aarons group at Goldman Sachs. And they needed a VP of fixed income trading technology using C++, Unix, and Sybase. Right? And then something started to change in the mid-90s. Right? I started getting calls from these same big executive kind of tech people, and they were looking and they were asking me if I had jobs for them on this thing called the internet. Right? And so because New York City is the birthplace and the capital of the universe for so many industries, including, not only banking and finance, but fashion.
Right.
Advertising, with Madison Avenue, right? New York City, the next iteration of those industries, for example, are being born right here in New York City, right? So, for example, fashion tech, ad tech, right? Media technologies, have all been kind of grown here. And look, I think New York City continues to push the envelope on emerging technologies.
Yeah, it's just really an evolution of what's been built here over the last, few decades, And
look, people come from all over the world, right? To New York City and to America, right? I think struggle is a requirement for success, right? And New York City, and people come to New York City from all over the world, to struggle and to work hard and to persevere, and to have victory.
I love that.
In their personal lives and to help build the industries of not only today but tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I want to turn back the clock a little bit. It's kind of the fun part of this is, we're in New York City, we're in Times Square today. I mean, we're seeing the emerging ad tech and media tech all behind us. It's really cool that we're here and we're talking about this. So if you could kind of turn back the clock, 15, 20 years on yourself, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give to yourself that could really help out some of our viewers today who are either looking to transition their career or they need to build that executive team?
Yeah, that's great. I would say two things. One, focus on your strengths. Build on your strengths, right? I think it's become very fashionable to be like a venture capital investor or to be an entrepreneur, right? And a lot of kind of young people are coming out of college or some of the top programs, and immediately they want to rush towards success because they've seen the movie.
Right.
They've seen
Startup to billionaire in 12 months or 18 months. And
right. And the truth is that there are no shortcuts.
There aren't.
It takes hard work, man. Right? At the base level, you've got talent. And talent is just the beginning. It takes years of hard work to develop something significantly more meaningful, and that's skill. Right? And entrepreneurship is the highest calling for people with skill. Right? And so I would say focus on your capabilities, focus on your skills, because it is hard work. And you've got to have a strong interest. You've got to have a passion for what you're doing, because there are going to be some hard days. And it's that passion that will allow you to persevere and push through. And the second thing is mentorship. Look, the success leaves clues, right? There are models of success. Failure leaves clues, right? We all have blind spots. And we don't know what we don't know, right? Go out, seek out models and mentors who can help accelerate. The beautiful thing that I love about startups, right, is that disproportionate growth leads to disproportionate learning. It's disproportionate learning that leads to disproportionate income and everything else that's beautiful in life. Right? It's your ability to solve bigger and better problems in the world that makes you more valuable. Right? So go out and find people who are already there, who are already doing it, And they're going to be attracted to you because of your grit and determination. And you're going to remind them of their former selves.
Right.
Right? I think one of the most beautiful things about humanity and human nature is this desire, this notion to elevate our station in life.
Yeah.
Right? And so go out and find some mentors and learn and model success, model behaviors, and figure out how to accelerate, how to learn in 3 years what otherwise might take you 10 years.
Right. Yeah, and those go really well together, playing to your strengths and then finding the mentors that can really find those blind spots or those weaknesses. And again, you can come in and really help them to build out that team that complements them and allows them to have that disproportionate growth. So for those that are watching here today and they say, you know what, Dave, you can help me. You can help me build this team. Where can they learn more about what you do and maybe get started in the process?
That's great. Well, look, it's 2016, right? And so the advent of social media and really kind of getting your message out is something that we've just begun to do. And so DaveCarvajal.com is a place where we're sharing some of this rich content and thought leadership.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my firm is DavePartners.com.
Awesome. I love it. Dave, thanks so much for hanging out with us here in Times Square. Appreciate it. You being here and sharing the advice. And we'll be back in just a minute with more Times Square Today.